Hey everyone, today's video is brought to you by Verve, spelled VRV, made by the team over at Crunchyroll. It's home to your favorite channels, and it gives you a chance to discover more content from the creators that we all know and love, and support their newest creations. Over on this new super combined service, you get Crunchyroll, allowing you to watch My Hero Academia Season 2 subtitled, and you can also go to Funimation and watch Attack on Titan Season 2 dubbed. You just download the Verve app down below with the link, and that will give you a 30-day free trial to the service. And if you want to know all of the different programs that this service has, then I highly recommend getting your 30-day free trial through our link so that you can look at everything that's available to you. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where we epically recap your favorite comic books with music, voices, and sound effects. Today we're going to be covering an older story from the Cable and Deadpool run in which Deadpool finally needed to decide, will he be a hero or a villain? It's time for part 1 of Deadpool versus the Marvel Universe. It was a late night for Wade Wilson as he goes to pay his respects to the man that he owes a lot to, Cable. Wade says that it's been a few weeks already, and he thought by now he would, travel through time, or clone himself, or come up with some other lame explanation as to why he's not here. But before he could go on, Wade grabs his katana, telling the person behind him, I'm not really in the mood. Scott Summers steps from the shadows, telling him that he's only here to pay his respects, the way a father should for his fallen son. Wade tells him that he should have been there on Providence with him, and Scott says that he knows. However, they can't be everywhere at once. Scott looks over and says that there is actually another reason that he's here. The X-Men need Deadpool's help. Wade glares at Scott, and he gulps. The next night back in Manhattan, Sandy asks why aren't the X-Men handling this themselves, and Wade says because they know better than to get involved when Wolverine goes out for a claw bout. Wade goes on saying that Scott knew he had recently hit this Hydra base and figured quickly and quietly, okay, maybe at least quickly. Outlaw then asks why not just Wolverine, kill all the bad people. Wade then flips the slide to a scientist saying that this man is his friend Weasel who is being held prisoner. They all know wherever Wolverine goes, everyone has a thing about dying. And Wade wants Weasel to survive. Meanwhile, over at the Hydra base, Weasel looks at himself in a mirror practicing his Hail Hydra when a few agents come to his room and tell him it's time. Out in the main hall, Weasel stands before the agents and other scientists telling him that he's finally finished up making the device that will allow them to attack whoever they want, whenever they want. He is pleased to present to them the Penetrator. One of the scientists tells him that the name seems a little off, maybe it's a little too provocative? Weasel shouts, nonsense! The device will let us penetrate the walls of Mother Earth, ram home our agenda, and thrust ourselves into the very womb of civilization. Everyone just stares at him and he shouts, Hail Hydra! And then he says that he will now need a test subject to show them how this works. Two agents look at him and then they push him through the portal, where on the other side he falls out. Weasel begins coughing, telling them, thank God it worked! I mean, of course it worked! Now with his teleport technology, the former prisoner Weasel will create an invincible army of teleporting warriors. Remember their former prisoner, Hail Hydra! Meanwhile, outside, Wade Wilson continues to follow closely behind Wolverine as he kills more of the guards, and Bob asks, why exactly am I even here? Wade tells him that he's here just in case he needs to make a trade for Weasel. Of course, but that's kind of like Plan Z. Bob then asks, if that's Plan Z, what are the chances of screwing up all 25 other possibilities? So rather than sneaking and following Wolverine, Wade decides to take a more direct approach in finding Weasel and kill everyone in his path. Back inside, Weasel begins to make the final adjustments to the teleporter, and the two agents tell him that he needs to hurry. They're under attack by Deadpool, and he's like their 4th or 5th biggest target, maybe the 6th. Outside, Wade continues killing everyone, shouting, where is my friend Weasel? And then suddenly a voice calls out to him, and Wade turns back to see Weasel in armor? Weasel shouts for him to stop the senseless slaughter, or he will be forced to teleport him far, far away, for he is the Penetrator. Wade stops and asks, Penetrator? And Wade tells him, no, focus on the traitor part. So Wade tells him, okay, and then he proceeds to shoot every bit of him, and somehow he shoots Bob. Wade runs up grabbing Weasel, telling him that they need to hurry and leave, and he asks, how did he know that it was him? Oh no, there's one more behind him. Instinctively, Wade spins around and shoots Bob in the leg, and then he says, oops, that was actually my friend. But really, we do need to get out of here. Suddenly, everyone hears a schnick, and Bob says that he knows that sound. In training, they taught him to run from that sound, and he can't run! Everyone looks back and they see Wolverine lumbering their way. And Wade tells him, whoa, 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 whoa! Listen, one of my fellow X-Men told me to come here. You know, Cyclops, the guy with no sense of humor, but for some reason scores all of the hot chicks. Anyway, the place is trashed, so we should just all leave together and give the Mad at Hydra thing a bit of a rest. What do you say? As Wade puts his hand on Wolverine's shoulder, he spins back, slicing Wade's head off. As the severed head bounces back to Weasel and Bob, Wolverine asks, "Who's next, Bob?" If you're wondering what's going on, keep in mind, this story takes place a long time ago, when Deadpool wasn't exactly a hero. Bob shouts that he just cut off his head! And Wolverine tells him, with his healing factor, we should have about 12 minutes before he won't survive. Bob shouts again, survive? You cut off his head! And Wolverine then tells him, you can just take the head and reattach it. But I needed him out of the way so that I could show the penetrator something long and hard and cold and sharp. Wolverine lunges at Weasel and he disappears and then reappears, telling him, wait! But Wolverine continues swinging. After disappearing again, Wolverine waits and sniffs the air. And then he slashes right as Weasel reappears, damaging the suit. Weasel tells him, look, you're not getting the part of my name that's important. It's Penetrator with an I. But then more Hydra agents run into the room and Weasel shouts, thank you. And he disappears just as the fight begins. Through Wolverine's bloody rampage, Bob grabs Wade's body and he tells him that he's sorry for stepping on the dead bodies. But if you'll excuse me, Bob then throws Wade's body down and he puts his head back on, and then he notices that the head's backwards. So Bob awkwardly takes the head and twists it back. And he asks, how long is the healing supposed to take anyways? A few minutes later, when Wolverine continues slashing away at everything, Wade jumps in, slashing at Wolverine's leg, telling him, and I was in the mood for a team up. The two begin hacking and stabbing at each other until Wolverine finally slams and pins Wade into a wall, telling him, your friend really isn't a friend. There's a report going around that he's been putting together a plan for the past few weeks, and Wade stomps him and tells him he's not an agent of Hydra. He just got stranded here when he hit this place up a couple of months ago and somehow happened to leave with Bob. But while he's trying to convince Wolverine, Weasel's voice shouts that he is correct. He is an agent of Hydra, and now he will show them the power of the Penetrator! All of the other Hydra agents then shout, Hail Hydra! And in a flash, they're gone. Weasel smiles and says, look, fight's over! And then Weasel and Wade high five. Wolverine looks around and asks, what just? But Weasel tells him that he was trying to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. You know, Penetrator. I was going to betray them all along. Even Wade figured that out. A few hours later, back at Nate's memorial, Scott tells Wade thanks, and Wade tells him it's fine. His friend lived, and that's what counts. He then looks at Nate's statue, and he tells Nate that he made some new friends now, so he's going to miss him, but it's time to move on from Cable and Deadpool. As Wade walks back with Weasel and Bob, Wade notices Weasel's suit spark, and then he says that it's been doing that for a while now. Weasel tells him, yeah, it's been doing that ever since Wolverine hit it, but it should be fine. Suddenly, a blinding flash emits from the suit, and once it fades, Weasel looks around and doesn't see Wade or Bob, and he simply says, uh-oh. Soon after that, Wade Wilson finds himself fighting alongside Captain America Steve Rogers and his trusty sidekick Bucky, asking, who the F are you? And Wade shouts, language! Besides, I'm Deadpool, fighting American patriot hero. Canadian hero, as far as you know. Steve bashes a group of soldiers and he tells Bucky at ease, and that they shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Deadpool, was it? You said you're Canadian? Wade tells him, yeah, we have our own super soldier project thingy. And he explains that he's actually here cause, the Nazis have a secret time machine and they're trying to go to the future and win that way. And that would be super bad. As the fighting stops, Bucky looks at Bob and he asks, what's the H for? And Wade tells him, Hyder. He's Hyder, an excellent infiltration operative. Steve looks at him and says, that's good, because we're looking into the activities of a Nazi scientist named Armin Zola. And Wade shouts, that's great, we should team up. If you haven't figured out what's going on, Wade has somehow time traveled, and he's currently at World War II with Captain America and Bucky. Before they leave, there's another flash, and then Bucky and Steve begin to ask the same questions that they've already asked. And after answering them again, Wade pulls Bob aside and he asks, what the heck was that? And Bob tells him that it seems like a temporal hiccup. It's like they forgot the last few seconds. Wade then says, look, I know the Zola guy, at least in the future. Crazy but brilliant. He could get us back to our time. Probably. Bob shouts, he's kind of a Nazi. And Wade tells him, spoilers, we win the war and everything's peaceful. Okay, maybe not. But not because of the Nazis, so we should probably go with Camp and Bucky. Wade walks back over to Steve Rogers and he says, actually, we're on a mission tracking the Nazi scientist Arnim Zola. And Steve tells him that they happen to be looking for him as well, so they should work together. After a few minutes of walking, Bucky looks at Bob, and as Wade and Steve walk around, he quickly pulls out his knife, grabbing Bob, asking what is his real story. Bob stutters, telling him that he was trained to resist any kind of torture. here, and Bucky pushes the knife into his neck as he shouts that he's Bob and he's an agent of Hydra. We're a fascist organization originally created from the remnants of the Nazi army that you will defeat in 1945, and we've come from the future. Another flash emits, and then Bucky lets go, asking him, what's the H stand for? A short while later, after reaching the target cabin, everyone sneaks in to find Zola working on one of his experiments. Bucky asks Steve if he thinks that this Deadpool guy is smart enough to follow their lead, and Steve tells him he seems quite competent. Let's get to work. Steve jumps on the rafter shouting, Zola, your madness ends now. And Zola grabs a lever shouting, Nein! He will not be stopped by Americans, Vine! And Wade tells him, hey, some of us are Canadian, sort of. As electricity fills the room, Zola shouts that Frankenstein is his creation and now he is his. A giant elongated person stands up and begins attacking, and Steve says that this poor soul is in agony. The elongated man begins punching Bucky to the ground, and then he knocks Wade into a wall, impaling him. Steve shouts to Wade, but Wade pulls himself off of the pipe and he tells him, no problem, and then he kicks the elongated man. Wade then aims his gun at Zola, telling him to turn the machine off, and as he fires, the elongated man jumps in the way. Zola shouts for the man to kill them, and as he turns back to everyone, Wade says that they probably want to rethink the poor creature thing. As the fighting continues, Wade starts to glow, and he says that he's got an idea. He runs and he grabs onto the elongated man, and suddenly the room begins to fill with light. As it fades, the elongated man's body is blown apart, and Steve asks, what just happened? And who are you? The head of the elongated man says, please kill me. I won't ever be normal again. So Wade pulls out his gun, telling them that when there's no alternative but doing the right thing, Steve shouts for him to wait, and Bob runs up shouting for Wade, but Steve asks, what's going on? And then there's another flash of light. Steve begins asking, who are you? And then another flash emits, but this time they disappear. Back in the present at the Baxter building, Weasel says that they should have brought them back, and then a voice tells him that they have 3 questions. Weasel turns back to see T'Challa and the other Fantastic Four members asking, 1, where's Deadpool now? 2, what can the Fantastic Four do about that? And 3, how much trouble will there be if the first 2 are not answered? Meanwhile, in the now not so distant past, Ben Grimm of the original Fantastic Four tells Wade to quit jumping around like a blasted monkey. And Wade asks, have you looked into a mirror recently? Because Reed shouts asking, how did you access the time platform? And Wade tells him that he honestly has no idea. But as Wade tries to fight back against Reed, he ends up being bounced off and right into the path of Ben Grimm. Ben yells, there's clobbering time! And Wade says that this is probably gonna hurt a bit. A few moments later, Bob sits in a corner covering his face, reciting the Hydra rule of concealment number 114. If you can't see them, they can't see you. Johnny tells him they can see him. And Bob says that it must be because of the invisible girl reflecting the light of somebody. And after picking Bob up and scanning him, he says that it seems like it came from the past, but they're actually from the future, correct? A short while later at the breakfast table, Reed sums up Bob's story and says that now, somehow, they seem to be leaking coronal particles, which is now bringing them closer to their own present, which is the future. Bob says, yep, and technically he is a Hydra agent, but he only did it for the dental plan and the benefits. As Susie pours Ben a cup of coffee, light begins to emit from Bob, and as it fades, Reed jumps up shouting, there's a Hydra agent at our breakfast table! And Bob sighs and says that this is getting real old. A little while later, after explaining their situation once again, Wade and Bob find themselves standing on Reed's time platform. Bob asks if they should go to the bathroom before they leave, and Reed tells him that it's fine, he'll be back in his time in nanoseconds. As the time platform begins to pull Wade, he says that it's so much easier to find a team up with people who have no idea who you are. And Reed asks, what? And then as he disappears, Wade says, never mind, bye. Seconds later, Wade and Bob begin to tumble through time, seeing all the bits and pieces of the events around the world, and as they fall further, the events start to become distorted, like things are not lining up properly. There's a Punisher Deadpool, an X-Man leader Deadpool, Bob running Hydra, an Iron Man Deadpool? Up and above in the vortex of time, Johnny says that it seems like the further they go, the more time breaks. Reed reaches down to grab them, and Wade shouts that they are saved! But then lightning strikes down on the Fantastic Four's Fantastic Car. T'Challa jumps down and says that he's sorry, but he's going to have to take over from here. Reed asks if they are from Deadpool's time, and if they are, they can retrieve them. So T'Challa responds with a yes. Reed then asks if he's here with Ben and Johnny as the Fantastic Four, does that mean that him and Sue are? But T'Challa stops him, telling him that you're just on vacation in our time. Storm tells everyone that she's sorry, that she couldn't just let them touch Wade or Bob because they could have all been lost in the bifractured timelines. T'Challa then takes out a device, and after Reed looks at it, he says that they could siphon the excess coronal particles suffusing on their bodies, thereby creating a rubber band effect that would snap them back to their proper time. T'Challa says that he was just going to say bring them back, but that works. While the two Johnnies begin to create an upward draft stabilizing the Fantastic Car, Susie shields Reed and the two Bens anchor him down. Reed then quickly reaches back down, telling everyone to get ready for a painful jolt, and he hits the bottom. A bit later, Wade stares down at the barrel of his gun, asking, "So, we forgot everything, huh?" Weasel tells him, "Yeah." It realigned their coronal signature, snapping them back to their own time, and thankfully they have no memory of anything that just happened. Ben then shouts at Wade to go on and get his mercenary butt out of here, and take his Hydra agent with him. Sandy and Outlaw, however, they can stay. As the three men leave, Weasel says that he can't believe that they stayed back, and Bob asks, can you really blame them? So without any other choice on how to make money, Wade and the rest of his team head back to Agency X to pick up a job. And as the door opens, Wade shouts that they're ready for their next mission. Alex yells back, good, because he has a client who specifically is asking for him. Wade looks over and screams, by the onion rings of Rangoon! Stephen Strange tells Wade, good evening. How would you like to stop the utter destruction of your planet, considering that you're the one who created the threat? Now, as you can tell, this is a long story, Deadpool versus the Marvel Universe, and we're going to be dealing with that in the next episode where he continues to go through it because he messed up the timeline and he doesn't have Cable to save the day, and maybe we'll get Cable at the end. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, I technically do because I read the book, but maybe you don't know. But don't forget, this episode is brought to you by Verve, the best place to get all of your favorite video services in one location. If you click the link down below, you'll get yourself a free 30-day trial to this new service to see the greatest combination of services ever. And don't forget, you can subscribe to this channel to get more videos, including the conclusion to Deadpool versus the Marvel Universe. I'll see you guys next time right here.